But yesterday they were all filled, and they were having autographs too. So Sundays are different. Well, every Star Trek convention has unique qualities. This one too is different, like these patches of empty seats here. I should have opened by saying, oh my, because of the empty seats here. But it is always good to be back for another Creation Star Trek convention here in Las Vegas. And with all of you. And yesterday I thanked all of you through the ages who have been giving us this fantastic support and contributing to the longevity of Star Trek. On the autograph line, I met more than a few people who told me that this was their first Star Trek convention. So yes, there's another one. Thank you all for being brand new Star Trek fans and joining in on this great phenomenon. We call it a great, big, huge family reunion. The generations from 52 years ago to ones that are coming to the Star Trek conventions for the first time. But at the same time, the Star Trek cast seems to be growing. Today is Star Trek Discovery Day, I'm told. So welcome Star Trek Discovery fans. That's the wonderful thing about the enormous success that Star Trek's had, because we keep growing and our large extended family keeps getting bigger and bigger, and now we have another generation of Star Trek Trekkers, Star Trek generation. And I met Sonequa, how do you pronounce her name? Sonequa for the first time this afternoon. And also I met Anthony Rapp. I've been his fan from the time that he was on Rent. And it was great to meet him. And also on Star Trek Discovery is in Amaraka, Wilson Cruz, who I've known for some time. They're both very fine actors, but to me they also personify an important new for Star Trek, because when Gene Roddenberry created Star Trek, he created all the characters as straight, because this was back in 1966, and the only way that Star Trek could have gotten on was to make all the characters straight. That was a time back then when gay was not known in America. Americans never heard of the word gay and people's various orientations. And so that was the way Gene Roddenberry created it. I got an exciting phone call from John Cho in 2014 when he told me that the writers were considering paying tribute to me because of my activism for LGBT equality, which was very flattering. But, well, thank you. It was very flattering, but I said, the movie is going to be coming out in 2016, which would be the 50th anniversary of Star Trek, a unique event. And certainly the tribute should be to Gene Roddenberry, not to me. And I think it's wonderful that we can deal with the issue of sexual orientation. But how are they going to do that? And he said they're going to make Sulu gay, or John Cho told me they're going to make Sulu gay. And I said, no, wait a minute. Gene Roddenberry created Sulu as straight. In fact, he has a daughter who became a helmsman in the next generation. And so are you suggesting that Sulu was closeted and he comes out in the Star Trek Beyond film? I don't think that's right. And I said, Gene Roddenberry supported the the idea of equality for LGBT people. But that equality, and he was always supportive of that, but that equality should be dealt with on Star Trek. It's wonderful that we can deal with it now, but it should be dealt with as Gene Roddenberry would have done it. He would have been creative, and he would have been original, and he would have created a character who was gay all his life as a member of that generation in the 23rd century, but also working his way through Starfleet Academy and becoming a member of Starfleet. They should tell an original story with an original character that's gay. And John said, I'll relay that to the writers, which he apparently did, because the director called me and I shared that again. He listened, and I thought I had conveyed that idea. But when I saw the film, it was something that just breezed past, just a few seconds. Sulu comes back from a long mission, and there waiting for him is a man with a little girl, and he rushes to the little girl, hugs and kisses her, and in the next shot, they're walking off together. As I shared yesterday, he could have been his brother or a friend with his little daughter. If you were looking for the idea of a gay couple, yeah, you might have read that in, but there was no kissing, no hugging with the guy at all. So it was an opportunity missed. But with Star Trek Discovery, and with the two actors, very talented actors, Anthony Rapp and Wilson Cruz, that is being done the way I'm sure Gene Roddenberry would have wanted to see it done. And we welcome Star Trek Discovery, and particularly the bold new move, moving forward with the idea of sexual orientation being a part of the norm of that future society in the year 2003. So we are making great progress, and thank you to Alex Kurtzman and all the others that were involved with Star Trek Discovery, and certainly the personification of those two characters, Wilson Cruz and Anthony Rapp. So this is a brand new move for Star Trek, and thank you for the support you're giving to the Star Trek Discovery on that mission day. So we keep growing, we keep adding new fans, and we keep adding new members to our large extended Star Trek family. But at the same time, there are people that were there from the beginning who are missing. We have lost a few very dear members of our family. And one that I particularly miss is Jimmy Doohan, Scotty. He was a great friend, great guy. Yes, let's give him a cheer. And there was nothing more enjoyable than a 5-hour flight from LA to New York with Jimmy Doohan as your seatmate. I learned a great deal from him. He told me on one of those flights that he's actually he became famous as playing the Scotsman, but he said he's really a Irish Canadian born in Vancouver. Ah, Canadian there. Eh? He's from Vancouver and he's Irish. But, he told me, I qualify playing a Scotsman because I've drunk enough of the libation of Scotland. And he proved it to me there on that plane. He loves his Scotch. And so, Jimmy was someone that I loved dearly. But another person that I love dearly is Nichelle Nichols, and he and Jimmy Doohan and Nichelle were like an old married couple. They were constantly bickering with each other. Jimmy is very punctual. He gets to everything on time, whether it's catching flight that we were all taking together. There's a car that comes to pick us up, or an appointment. He was always there on time. Dear Nichelle, who's here with us today, is someone who enjoys doing things on her own luxurious time. She takes time getting dressed. She's very fastidious about her makeup and making sure everything is perfect. And Jimmy is always futzing and fussing and angry and grumbling about Nichelle being late. And if we were all going someplace, if we were on the same limo, he would say, if Nichelle isn't there, driver, let's go. We're gonna leave her behind. She's not here. And but the driver would say, we'll wait 5 minutes more. And finally, Nichelle arrives, and we were ready to go. And the bickering between the two of them was something that we've gotten used to over time. Nichelle is my dear friend as well. She is someone who's very generous and kind, and I'm a political activist, and I put together a lot of fundraisers, so we needed someone to entertain at these fundraisers. And I can always call on Nichelle to not only come dressed to the nines, glittering and absolutely stunningly out of this world, but to turn in a performance that literally transported people. And I'm grateful to her. I don't know, has she been on already? Not yet. Well, I'm her warm-up guy. She's going to be on soon, and she's a great gal. DeForest is another person that we miss. He was the total opposite. He was a total opposite of Jimmy Dewey. Jimmy loved going to conventions and talking with fans. He loved his fans, as did DeForest. But unlike most actors, Dee was very shy, and he didn't like large crowds. And I think that's why you didn't see him at too many creation conventions, because creation conventions are really big. And he was very much a Southern gentleman. He was from Macon, Georgia, and he had that Southern gentleman quality. Very civil, very polite, very gentlemanly. And he loved smaller groups. And after one of the conventions, the others went right back home, and I decided to stay on, and DeForest did too. So we had dinner one night, and DeForest was getting very philosophical. And he said, Star Trek has enjoyed fantastic longevity, but you are, he said to me, you are always exercising, running, watching what you eat, and you know, you're going to be the first one that's going to leave us. Well, I believe in that Vulcan greeting, live long and prosper. We all should believe in it. And I had a grandmother who celebrated 104 birthdays. So I share her genes. And I hope I do celebrate 104 birthdays. But I'm very competitive. I plan to beat my grandmother. And I told DeForest that too. But Mother Nature has a way of determining our time on this earth, and I must say DeForest fully enjoyed his time on this planet as he wanted to. He was a great guy. He had a pet that symbolized him. It was a turtle, a great big land turtle. That was his favorite pet. And the pace that pet kept is very much like the pace that DeForest kept. And we think of him lovingly as well. But most importantly, the man who created Star Trek, Gene Roddenberry, He was really an extraordinary man. He saw television as a wonderful medium for communication, for entertainment, and for enlightenment. But he thought that television was being wasted because it wasn't talking about the enlightenment part. The 1960s was a turbulent time for America. Things were happening that was changing the way we live. We had the civil rights movement going, African Americans campaigning for equality, and that was being resisted by law enforcement officers with attack dogs and fire hoses. It was a time when we also had a war going on in Southeast Asia, and that war was dividing this country. Those who supported the war fiercely and those who supported the idea of peace, that difference being settled diplomatically, and that was dividing this country. And these divisions were so strong and so keen that awful things were happening. The President of the United States was assassinated. The leader of the civil rights movement, the eloquent and charismatic Dr. Martin Luther King, was assassinated. The President's brother, who was the Attorney General, was assassinated. All of this turbulence was going on in the 60s, and none of it was really being reflected on television. And Gene Roddenberry wanted to see that done. And what he did was, again, his genius of coming up with an idea, telling science fiction stories, excitingly, dramatically, compellingly, but using science fiction as a metaphor to reflect the realities of the time. And so he created Star Trek. The Starship Enterprise was a metaphor for Starship Earth, and the strength of the starship lay in the diversity of the starship coming together, people from different cultures, different races, different faiths, different histories, different ideas, all coming together and working in concert as a team, boldly going where no one had gone before. And to have that view of that future as being a good one, where we look to the future with curiosity and intelligence and open-mindedness so that we learn from what we achieve. And by doing so, we build a better world. And so that was what Star Trek was all about. That excited me. And obviously it touched the audience because it reached all of you that were the original fans. And you are the ones, yes, the original fans. A great big applause. Bravo to you guys. You did it. It was nip and touch and go for a long time, but here we are, 52 years young, and with a great energy. And from this convention, it was announced by Patrick Stewart himself that another Star Trek series, a spin-off series, is happening, starring Jean-Luc Picard. So Star Trek continues to grow and grow. I first met, it's very interesting, I meet a lot of the Star Trek people up in the air, 35,000 feet up. I did a play in Scotland, and I was coming back. I had a flight from London back to Los Angeles, a long flight. I got on with a lot of reading material and sat down, and the flight took off. And there was another man quietly sitting next to me, and he was reading a book. And I happened to glance over, and that profile was one that I thought I recognized from the photos and the news visualization. It was like the actor named Patrick Stewart. uncanny that his doppelganger should be sitting right next to me. But I thought, well, this is going to be a long flight, and I won't bother him, and I kept on reading. But my eyeballs just kept going this way. And so I thought I'd check. And so I reached over and put my hand on his arm, and I said, "Excuse me, but aren't you?" And the man looked at me startled, and then his eyes opened, and he said, "Why, aren't you?" It was Patrick Stewart. He was coming to Los Angeles to have meetings with the producers who were putting together The Next Generation. So we met 35,000 feet up, flying back, and I was doing a play in Scotland, flying back to Los Angeles. So there are things that happen in Star Trek that seem quite fantastical, but it was meant to be. And here we are in this fantastical world of Star Trek. I mean, Las Vegas. This is also a whole different planet. It's not part of America. And with all us gathering together, humanoids and alien beings that are out there, all celebrating another year, 2018, of Star Trek. We are a wonderful, wonderful manifestation of that Vulcan reading, live long and prosper. We've been around for a long time. We are prosperous, and we will continue to hold together. And so with that, let's begin the questions. Are you there?
I'm here.
And you're there over there?
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Let there be light. Let's start with you.
George,
yes.
On the original series, I mean, I noted that there was a lot of really capable and excellent directors that, handled the shows. And among the names that come to mind are like, I think, Mark Daniels and, Joseph Pevney, Ralph Sinensky, and in the third season, I think Marvin Chomsky, and then, of course, the pilot was directed.
You have a great memory.
I'm sorry?
You have a great memory with all those names.
Okay, I try.
But directors don't get remembered, so I'm sure they appreciate you.
But is there a director that, you remember that you had was really, the best director for your character, and that you had some memorable times with on the set?
Absolutely, and that was the first one you named, Mark Daniels. He did a lot of Star Treks, but he also did my favorite episode, Naked Time. And that was a good show, wasn't it? Well written by John D.F. Black and very well directed by Mark Daniels. And before we began shooting that, he came over to my dressing room and he said, "George, do you work out?" And I said, "Yes, I do." He says, "Take your shirt off." I took my shirt off and he said, "Okay, we're going to do your fencing scene without your shirt." And so that's my favorite episode, and that scene is my favorite scene. And because Mark had the eye and the good taste and the good showbiz savvy, I love him forever for that. I enjoyed doing that, and he made it as enjoyable as it was.
Thank you very much.
There's another very interesting Jimmy Doohan aspect to that story. Because I had that shirtless scene, I was doing a lot of push-ups in my dressing room, and I had my fencing foil, and I wanted to be ready for that scene when it came back. So I found a flat at the far end of the soundstage, well out of the way of the scene where the action was, and I was practicing my lunges behind that foil, and I was, going and I was hugging and bumping, and Jimmy was over there where the action was, and he heard all the sounds, so he came walking over across the vast soundstage to check out what was going. Jimmy is an actor who has a great sense of timing, and he peered behind that flag just as I was lunging, and I missed his face by inches when he appeared over. And he was startled and shocked, and he turned around and almost jogged back to the set complaining, "George attacked me with a fencing foil. Go over there, go look." And Greg Peters, the assistant director, came over to check out what Jimmy was complaining about. And he too, with that sense of timing, peered when I was lunging. And so he put me down as having been attacking fellow actors. That's the truth, though.
Thank you.
Hi, George. Two very quick questions. One is, tell us about Star Trek New Voyages when you were in there, how you felt. And secondly, animated series Star Trek. I think Leonard said he was not going to be in there unless you were in there. Can you please share those thoughts?
Well, the last one, it wasn't just me. When the right to do the animated version was sold to Filmation, they hired Bill, Leonard, Jimmy Doohan, and Major Barrett, and DeForest Kelly. And that was it. And Jimmy was to do Scotty and all the other male voices. And Major was to do Nurse Chapel and all the other female voices. And when, because of the limited budget that they had, when Leonard heard about that, he said, Star Trek is about diversity coming together and working together. And the two people that most personify diversity are Michelle and George. Why aren't they with us? And they said, well, we don't have the budget. We can't afford it. And he told them, well, if George and Michelle aren't with this, people who represent and personify the diversity that Star Trek has to have, then I'm not interested. Which was an extraordinary stand for an actor to make, to give up his own job for the sake of two other actors. It was a principled act, but also a very self-sacrificing act. And because Leonard is so important to Star Trek, they found the money to hire the two of us. And so I'm very grateful to Leonard, and he is a person who has the character and principle to stand for what he believes in. He has that spine. There are very few people like that. So he's another one that's already left us that I love deeply. He was also very supportive. Every time I did a theater piece, he was there in the audience to cheer me on. Leonard played Dysart on Broadway in the play Equus, a powerful play about. You know the play Equus. And did you see Leonard? He was wonderful in it. He did it on Broadway, and I was doing that in Los Angeles, playing the same role. And Leonard came to see it. The ushers came backstage to tell me that Leonard's in the audience. And when the performance was over, Leonard came back to the dressing room smiling. And so I said, well, Leonard, how'd I do? Thinking, he's the guy who did it on Broadway, and he might give me some pointers. He smiled and just said, George, you were better. Now, that's an absolute lie, but that's, again, his graciousness and expressing his support that way he did. There was another part to your question. What was that?
How much fun was it doing Star Trek New Voyages after all those years?
That's the one that James Crowley did in upstate New York in Ticonderoga.
Yes.
I was really shocked, that there are fans who are so devoted and absolutely, completely obsessed with Star Trek. There was one guy who had his name officially changed to James Tiberius Kirk, legally. James Crowley, was it Crowley or Cawley? Cawley, C-A-W, Cawley. He is a fanatical lover of Star Trek. He lives in a small town, and as a matter of fact, that small town was getting kind of shabby, one of those Rust Belt cities. And the local car dealer went out of business. And so here was this shop, a vast space, and lying empty. And this guy, whose profession is Elvis impersonator, he does that on a cruise ship up and down one of the rivers there. He bought that and transformed that into his own private movie studio and built with volunteer labor the bridge of the Enterprise. And to work on that project, we have now this thing called the Internet, and he broadcasts this appeal for volunteers to help work on that. And volunteers came internationally. People came from Latin America, from Europe and Asia to volunteer to work on it. They had a lot of passion, a lot of energy, and a lot of dedication, but very little professionalism. And the filming was pretty chaotic. It went into the wee hours of the night. But I love working with people who have that kind of passion and love and a complete dedication to a project. And James Cawley is the guy who made it happen. He is an absolutely incredible, well, he is credible. I believe what he does, and he accomplishes that, and with a lot of unusual dedication and self-giving. I mean, he spends his own money to do all that. He's an amazing guy.
Thank you.
No one there. Are we done with all the people? No lights on either side. Well, let's open it up to everybody. Anybody have any? Those of you way in the back, I won't be able to see you. So
I have a question.
Oh, there you are. Oh, they cut off. Oh, they want me off. I get it. They're trying to tell me something. Oh, all right, that's my cue. Thank you all very much.